NAR settlement agreement will be in place, and there will not be an offer of compensation per the MLS. As a licensee, you cannot use the sales contract to negotiate your compensation. It's real simple. And I think that we're making this substantially more than what it is. Did you go read Inman? That's all I want to know. Yeah, you done had a heart attack this morning already. You got your panties in another bunch again. Well, you know I came with solutions for you, honey. I came with solutions for you. But I'm going to read this because I am clear that some people have no idea what this means to them. And as a result, they have an attitude. So the headline over at Inman, I'm going to get this because I want to be precise, okay? The headline was EXP not doing broker-to-broker compensation, okay? And I'm pretty sure in these private Facebook groups, everybody over there talking because they don't understand what that means, okay? So let's get the rules out the way first. What you cannot do, and I don't believe there's a state licensing body that allows you to do so. As a licensee, you cannot use the sales contract to negotiate your compensation. Let's just keep that clear, okay? But there is something that you can do. If, and it shouldn't even be an if, okay? Because they didn't told you to have a signed buyer representation agreement. What EXP actually is doing is making everybody compliant. They're not going to be the first company to do it. I promise you, probably by the end of the year, every single company will follow suit because it is in the best interest of following the rules and regulations and preventing future lawsuits. So, what can you do? If you have the form that you're supposed to have, a signed buyer representation agreement, I want you to start thinking about a signed buyer representation agreement with your offer of compensation. If you have a signed buyer representation agreement with an offer of compensation, your buyer can strike the lack of compensation to offset their contractual obligations. That means that we as agents cannot use our buyer sales contract to negotiate compensation, but the buyer can. The buyer can. And so I just want to tell my girl, kudos. Kudos, because it's making us compliant. If we don't, you ain't got to call to ask if there's no compensation. Don't even blow up the phone line. You're going to make sure that you have the paperwork that the Department of Justice wants you to have. And when you go to submit an offer, your buyer, who's in a signed buyer representation agreement with you, can strike the fact that there is no offer of compensation to offset their contractual obligation. That's just so simple to me. That's like the simplest thing that has happened this week. So let's see here. I got people tagging people. We'll tag them now because we're going to have this real discussion over here. Because everybody has come with a workaround. There are a lot of new portals out here. All of them going to land you in trouble. All of them are going to raise litigations for you and for your broker. I need your brokers. Baby, I need y'all to show up for your agents because they just as confused as they want to be. I don't know if you paid attention when you took the ABR class, but this is all in the ABR class. I want you to keep in mind, I have the ABR, the ABRM, and inducted into the ABR Hall of Fame. I've had that designation since 2004 when I was in the top 10% of realtors in the city of Chicago. Did 70 transactions. Most of them were buyer representation. I need you to understand this. Okay? And so, everybody who's conducting real estate needs to have a signed buyer representation agreement because there will be no offer made per the MLS. What I'm making a recommendation is don't even call me for compensation. Don't offer no compensation. Hold buyers agents accountable. That means they need to have their paperwork signed and they need to negotiate their compensation the same way that the listing agent negotiated their compensation. right? It's real simple. And I think that we're making this substantially more than what it is. If a listing agent has to negotiate that compensation, a buyer agent has to negotiate theirs. It's simple, but we've come up with new portals and workarounds for what the rules are. And if that is the case, I can tell you, you're setting yourself up for future problems. Don't do it to yourself. And so EXP, I'm just take my hat off to y'all because y'all did the thing. At first, when I was reading it, I had to get my head wrapped around it. But then I said, you could have, like literally, this is what I did. Oh, that makes all the sense in the world. How simplistic is that? So, in the next couple of, I'm gonna do a whole webinar for y'all because I'm gonna tell you, let me just give you these stats. You know, I keep up with my child. So Skylar Lemons, he's $218 short of capping this month. He was a little hot last night. Capping means he has done 6 figures. And because he came back to exit in February, he hasn't been back in 6 months. So he will cap. He will make $100,000 in 6 months, right? Tell you what that child do. He get a signed buyer representation agreement with an offer of compensation. He took the ABR class with Carrie. It's something that I'm consistently preaching to him. Not only does he get it, and he's 28. Not only does he get it, Vincent Ruff gets it when Skylar's traveling on all the new buyers they bringing in. So you're going to let a 28 and a 27-year-old implement a strategy, not even implement a strategy to get a signed buyer representation agreement with an offer of compensation. And you're going to let their little butts, and look, that was Skylar's income. That ain't this income. And you're going to let them make 6 figures in 6 months. Come on now. Come on now. They said no intermediary. What do you mean by no? They said no intermediary. So, are you talking about all these third-party sites that are coming up, all of these portals that are coming up that will lead to future litigation? All these gotta split on the site, all of that stuff, that's going to be a problem for you in the future. I need you to be clear right now. All you need to do is one thing: get a signed buyer representation agreement with an offer of compensation. And if you can't demonstrate your value, then you have a problem. If I see a 28-year-old and a 27-year-old out here demonstrating their value, I think anybody can. But I'm going to tell you who's letting us know they can. According to Dr. Lawrence Yoon, we have more realtor members today. We back over 1.5 million than we had when the NAR settlement agreement was announced. There are people who want your job. They waiting for you to leave. You can't figure it out. They're going to figure it out for you. There are people who don't know what we had in the past. They don't know it. And they still want our job. They still coming into this industry. But I was on a podcast this week, the 13%, because we see a 87% turnover. We got 1.5 million members with an 87% turnover, okay? That lets you know how many people want to come and do what it is that you do. They just waiting for you to move on out the way. Because you couldn't figure this thing out. They're going to figure it out for us. Is that my girl, Sharita, worldwide? Am I going to see you down there in New Orleans this week? We're going to eat us some broiled oysters down there worldwide. So I'm going to explain it again. What I think EXP done was genius. Let me just state that, okay? The incoming president of the Real Estate Business Institute, right, is at EXP. I think she's freaking fabulous, okay? What they decided to do was to not have any broker-to-broker compensation. Now, let me tell you something. We had already figured out last week that was going to be a huge headache. One thing is you could call the broker. Doesn't mean that the broker's going to call you back. So now we're thinking we're going to have a breakdown in communication. We're going to have a freaking issue, right? So what they're saying is we're not offering any compensation. That does not mean you cannot negotiate it. So let me clear this up. They're not making any offer. So don't call their agents and ask for it. Write that offer up. But I want you to think about this for a second. For everybody who has ever sold a HUD property, back in the day, HUD had compensation at $1. It was some of us who understood. I think I was getting $5 And let me be clear, this is not meant to be a violation of the Department of Justice. This is a matter of fact and how I was practicing real estate. I've made, I don't know if the max was 5 or 6% on HUD properties. What HUD was concerned about was the net to them. So when you were going to their portal to submit an offer, it was $1. There were people who would never sell a HUD home because they didn't know that they could negotiate their compensation. Kind of feels like what we're doing right now. Okay. So what that means that if you're doing your job as a buyer's agent and you are securing a signed buyer representation agreement, what you also need to ensure is that you have an offer of compensation from your buyer. You cannot use the sales contract to negotiate your compensation as a real estate agent, but your buyer can because they have a contractual obligation with you. That means that your buyer's looking at the fact that they have a contractual obligation to pay you X dollars. In their offer to said seller, they're going to ask the seller to offset their contractual obligation to you, their buyer agent, because the parties to the contract, the buyer and the seller, the tenant and the landlord, they can strike anything and ask for whatever they desire that they want. So what this is doing, in my opinion, is forcing buyer agents to do what the Department of Justice has already told them to do. So all these other portals, you going and putting your information in that you didn't even talk to your managing broker, do not sign up for nothing that your managing broker does not give you written permission to sign up for, because you're likely going to put yourself in a position to be sued in the future. Just don't do it. Just get the signed buyer representation agreement. Make sure it's with an offer of compensation. And then your buyer can strike any offer. Don't start texting and emailing the listing agent, okay? Because guess what? If they're at EXP, they just received notification. There will not be any broker-to-broker compensation. And why is everybody putting the responsibility on the listing agent for their buyer client? Why? But I do want you to keep something in mind as a buyer representative. Your buyer funds the real estate transaction. So I understand we got a shortage in inventory. We got these listing agents talking to people crazy. I don't want you to think it ain't real. It's real, right? With that in mind, okay, you got to learn how to play well in the sandbox. You have to take the personal emotion out of it because we have fiduciary responsibility. In my state, I owe every single buyer and seller, anybody I work with that's a client, what is called an old car. Obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accountability, reasonable skill, and care. I owe it to everyone. That loyalty piece means I'm putting their needs and wants before my own. It's probably the hardest part of our job, okay? But when y'all go into these private Facebook groups, don't be mad at EXP. I think what they did was genius. They're holding you accountable. They're reducing their litigation. I 100% believe that other companies will follow suit in the future because it comes back to one thing. If you're working with a buyer, you need to have a signed buyer representation agreement. It's just that simple. All these third-party websites that are coming back, if you go back and you look at the language, they're a violation of the terms, okay? So this whole visible presence, you don't need to have a visible presence when you have the ability to negotiate what you believe that you want, or better yet, you got a signed contract that says that you're due to be compensated that amount. And because I'm seeing a 28 and a 27-year-old do it all the time, I know anybody can do it. All we got to do is have, a change of mind. It ain't the way it used to be. It ain't. And guess what? It'll never be that way again in the future. The rate of change moving forward will occur faster than it's ever occurred in the past. ever. And there are people who want our job. We've made this job look glamorous. You mean to tell me all I got to go do is put a yard sign in the front yard, go to the closing table with a cute little key in a few weeks, and then it's off to Tulum? Because that's what they think. Now, you know I know better. I know it's hell. I just told you my son didn't cap this month, 218 company dollars short. You know he hotter than a little firecracker, right? He thought he was closing 2.3 million this month. He closed 1.5 million this month. Yeah, I just want to throw that out there. Because guess what he doing? Getting a signed buyer representation agreement because he understands his value. What's going on, Kim Nixon? How you doing today? Yeah, this is one. Let me tell you something. When I read it at first, I was like, I don't know about that. And then the light bulb went off. And I was like, Marky, no, you cannot use the contract to negotiate the compensation. But your buyer can. And that's why you need to have that signed buyer representation agreement. I just want to throw it out there for you, okay? Because look, your time is ticking. A lot of places. So a lot of places are making the change the week of, okay, week before. Let's go that way, of August the 17th. So don't even go on over there, them little private Facebook groups with all the cesspools of lies that they telling you, okay? Do not sign up for a portal that your broker does not give you written permission to sign up for. You don't want to be sued. And what they telling you is the best way to avoid being sued in the future is to have a signed buyer representation agreement. Signed buyer representation agreement. Go on and print you one out right now from your association, provided that they've updated them. I'm pretty sure every association is going to update this before August the 17th. Print it out, highlight it, take it into that bathroom in front of a mirror, and you need to start scripting that. But before you do that, what is your value to the consumer? How are you articulating that? How are you conveying that? Now is the time for you to clean that voicemail out for when people are calling you, they can leave you a message, okay? I had a real estate agent, voicemail full, don't return text messages, and then had other rules, right? You ain't doing no business, boo, if your voicemail full, okay? They already, when I call you and your voicemail is full, we already got an issue. Especially if you called me and told me to call you back. Guess what I'm not doing? Calling you back again. I don't even like talking on the telephone. So if you call me, tell me to call you, and when I call you, your voicemail is full, I'm not calling you again. And I can tell you it's a lot of us whose voicemail boxes are full. One, we have to have better dialogue with our broker. Two, you want to check in on what are your rules and regulations in your state. One thing that I remember when I got my real estate broker's license, I've always been a broker. Was that 2000? Let's go back to 2003. I came into real estate in 99 as a loan originator, then became a broker. On the form that I sent to the state of Illinois, it stated I was responsible for keeping up with any changes to the rules and regulations. It was not the state's responsibility to notify me. It is not the state's responsibility to notify you. It is not your local, state, or national association of realtors' responsibility to notify you. But I can promise you right now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you tuned out to your text messages and your emails. Because what I want to promise you is I have probably received over 1,000 messages between those three entities about this here good lawsuit in the past year. Over 1,000. Right now, I'm getting, I don't know, 20 a day, just so you know. Okay. So if you don't know what's going on, it was not your broker's responsibility. It's not the state's responsibility. It's not the local association's responsibility. It's not the state's responsibility. It's not the national responsibility. It's your responsibility because that sheet of paper said so. And that's just one thing that has always stuck in my mind. It wasn't, I need to go find the information when I'm handling a person's biggest transaction. It's not their responsibility to notify me. It's my responsibility to keep up with everything that comes with that great sheet of paper. Okay? And so, you got to do your homework. You can't do the cliff notes. You got to go read all of this. Okay? You got to. We got to. I'm not new to this. I'm 25 years in the game now. It will be my let me see what year. In my 21st year as a broker, owner, manager, whichever title you want to give me. And I take this job serious. I earned the ABR in 2003 and 2004. I was in the top 10% in the city of Chicago. I understand these rules. I read this paperwork, guys. Okay. So I want you to get your panties out of bunch, right? Because they've been bunched for a while, right? Because it is coming. Don't get mad at different companies for coming up with new rules and regulations. I will tell you what EXP done is going to save a lot of people. And I can see numerous franchises implementing that same, or companies implementing that same rule, because it makes buyer representative be in compliance without putting a new bottleneck in the system, calling every single listing agent to ask them about compensation. Listing agents don't want any more phone calls. They don't want any more emails. They do not want any more text. So now, dear buyer agent, do what it is you're supposed to do. Get a signed buyer representation agreement with an offer of compensation. If you like my listing, submit the best offer. And the reason I say submit the best offer, if we went back to HUD when the compensation was $1, HUD was going to take the offer that netted them the most money. So you want to take all these other factors in consideration when writing that offer, taking a look at the most recent comparative market analysis, taking into consideration the true condition of the home, taking in consideration, is there any special considerations that the seller needs in order to close said deal, right? What does that look like? And what type of monetary sacrifice will that come with? These are the things that we have to do. All right. If they aren't doing broker to broker, does that mean referrals also broker to broker? Did they mention that? Jennifer, not sure of the question. So if they aren't doing broker to broker, so I want to clarify. They're not offering broker to broker, because the assumption is if you have a signed buyer representation agreement, your buyer can negotiate the offer of compensation. Your buyer can negotiate, I don't keep saying that, the offer of compensation per the sales contract. The real estate agent cannot use the sales contract to negotiate their compensation, but their buyer client can. So also, did they mention, does that mean referrals also broker to broker? So I'm not clear about the referral broker to broker and exactly what do you mean by that? Okay. Let's see here. If I'm in Georgia and have a referral for an agent in Illinois, will they not accept my referral agreement? This has nothing to do with referral agreements. This is everything about buyer agency. So no, I'm not saying that. I'm going to be honest with you. We're still accepting referral agreements. Okay. So, one has nothing to do with the other, if that makes sense. But let me clarify. If you're sending a listing referral, we're still going to do that listing referral agreement. I do believe that buyer agents, if you're doing a buyer agent referral now and you anticipate to be compensated and doing that referral, I'm glad you brought this up, Jennifer. You might want to prime and prep your referral before you send it, because they're going to need to sign a buyer representation agreement with an offer of compensation. The better the referral you give, the better the referral you shall receive. Okay. And so now, if you're doing a buyer referral, it would still be either a percentage or a dollar amount of the amount earned. But how good is the referral? Right? Are they ready for this transaction? So, yeah, I could see that in the future that could prevent it. But we're talking about compensation on the listing of the client as it pertains to the NAR settlement agreement. I think she's trying to ask how they are handling referrals. They did not stipulate how they're handling referrals. But I would say before you do a referral, based on the rules and regulations, you want to call and make sure how they're handling referrals. They did not mention. So everything I'm talking about is about one thing, the NAR settlement agreement, not how referrals will be handled. But I do believe that as a result, referrals might look different in the future. So we can ask in the contract on behalf of the buyer that the seller will pay buyer's agreed compensation in the offer. Yes, but you're not doing it as the agent to you. You're doing it on behalf of the buyer. And I know that people say, well, it sounds like you're mincing words. Yeah, because one is illegal and one is not. It is unethical. It is illegal for a real estate agent to use a sales contract to negotiate their offer of compensation. Okay. It is not illegal for the buyer client to strike the offer of compensation to offset their contractual obligation. So I've had to go. Let me be clear. Every time I teach or taught the ABR class, this was an argument. One is illegal and one is legal, and it is 100% about how it is worded. And so what I would think that we might want to do and talk to your broker about this, you might want to get a new rubber stamp for your office. Your office might need a new rubber stamp that has the proper terminology that's stamped right on the contract where the buyer initials and put in what it is that they want. And I'm telling now, brokers, you might want to think about this rubber stamp or some type of language that's copied and pasted so that it reflects the rules and regulations in your state to ensure. But here, let me be clear also, it is illegal for the buyer to strike an offer of compensation to offset their contractual obligation if they don't have a buyer representation agreement. Okay, so don't do step 2 and you ain't do step 1, because then guess what? That's illegal too. All right, and so because I got a lot of people, they want to walk around. Everybody wants to circumvent the signed buyer representation agreement. Don't just stop it. Stop it. It's it's a couple of sheets of paper at best. At best. So I'm gonna say this again: the buyer representative cannot use a sales contract to negotiate their compensation. I can't do that. But my buyer who's in a signed buyer representation agreement with me with a offer of compensation can use their sales contract to ensure that I'm compensated to offset their contractual obligation. Okay? You typically can have a standard clause for your office. You definitely can have a standard clause for your office. So brokers, you need to come up with that standard clause. You need to text it. You need to email it. You need to put it in your private Facebook group. You might want to get a stamp, a custom stamp for your office that, it depends on the system, right? So for the old school office still doing paper, you got a rubber stamp. For the new school office that's doing DocuSign or Dot Loop or whatever online signature solution you've come up with, you got to copy and paste, right? Yeah. We concentrating on solutions, guys. Concentrate on the solution, not on the problem. And some of you already know that I believe commercial real estate is a solution because of the letter of intent. I believe that global real estate is a solution because guess what? They're getting a signed representation agreement. And I also believe that the EAH, the Employer Assisted Housing Program, is a solution. So for me, I'm always concentrating on the solutions. What do we need to do in order to make this happen? And it comes back to one thing. And in me saying this, the more that I say it, the more I understand the Department of Justice, even though I don't like how they went about it. Because what it is saying is if you are a buyer representative, you have the same responsibilities to negotiate your compensation that the listing agent did. All right, guys. I want y'all to go have a great day. I just need to come over here and tell you that EXP, great job. I think a lot of people will follow suit. All right.